I walked in on my girlfriend in bed with another man days before our engagement party. She blamed me saying I was worthless, and if I really loved her, she wouldn't need someone else. So I said okay and got my payback later. Hey Reddit, my name is Tyler, and I'm 30 years old. I work in data analysis for a mid-sized company in downtown Miami, and until exactly 1 week ago, I thought I had my life completely figured out. My fiancée Vanessa is 27 and works in marketing at a different company, though her building is right next to mine. We'd been together for 4 years and engaged for 9 months, with our wedding scheduled for this past Saturday. Notice I said was scheduled. There's a reason for that. Everything in my life seemed absolutely perfect until exactly 7 days ago. I'm writing this at 3 a.m. because my brain simply won't shut up about this entire messed up situation that has completely turned my world upside down. I honestly don't even know where to begin with this story, but I need to get it out somewhere because it's eating me alive. Trust me when I say you're going to want to read this one through to the end. So there I was at work on what I thought was just another normal Tuesday when my coworker Derek approached me. Derek works on a different floor, but we know each other pretty well and occasionally grab lunch together. He suggested we meet at this taco place across the street from our building, which seemed normal enough. But from the moment we sat down, Derek was acting weird as hell. He kept looking around nervously, like he was worried someone might overhear our conversation, which immediately put me on edge. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of awkward small talk, Derek took a deep breath and said, "Dude, I saw something over the weekend. You need to know about it, but I really don't want to be the one telling you this." My stomach immediately dropped to the floor. You know that terrible feeling when you can sense bad news coming your way, but you're still desperately hoping that maybe you're wrong? It's like when your boss asks to have a quick chat, or when your girlfriend starts a conversation with, "We need to talk." That exact sinking feeling was washing over me. Derek started explaining how he'd been at his condominium complex on Saturday afternoon, coming back from the gym around 2:30 p.m. His building is literally right next to mine. You can actually see my parking lot clearly from his balcony. As he was walking to his car, he happened to notice Vanessa in our parking lot with some tall guy he'd never seen before in his life. At first, Derek said he figured it was probably her brother or a cousin or something like that, so he didn't think much of it initially. But then, curiosity got the better of him, and he watched them for about a minute. That's when he realized this definitely wasn't family. This guy had his hands all over Vanessa in ways that were clearly intimate, and she was not only allowing it, but actively participating and encouraging it. Derek told me that he watched them making out pretty heavily right there in the parking lot. When they finally broke apart, Vanessa was laughing in this carefree way, touching this guy's chest like they'd been together forever. The familiarity between them was unmistakable. This wasn't some random encounter or innocent meeting. "I'm really sorry, man, but I couldn't let you walk into marriage without knowing," Derek said, his voice heavy with reluctance. The way they were acting, this wasn't some random thing that just happened. They looked comfortable together, you know? Like they'd done this many times before. I sat there trying to process what Derek was telling me, my mind racing in 1,000 different directions. Derek isn't the type of person to lie or exaggerate about something this serious. If he says he saw something, then he definitely saw it. Plus, he looked genuinely uncomfortable having to tell me this news, which somehow made it feel even more real and devastating. "Are you absolutely sure it was Vanessa?" I asked, desperately hoping there might be some mistake or misunderstanding. "Positive," Derek replied without hesitation. "I've seen her at company events like 12 times over the years. It was definitely her, no doubt about it." Then Derek delivered the blow that really hit me like a truck. "And Tyler, they went upstairs together to your apartment afterward." That piece of information hit completely different from everything else. This wasn't just some random encounter in a parking lot or a moment of weakness that could potentially be explained away or minimized. This guy had been inside our apartment, our private space, our home. He'd probably been in our bed, touching our things, making himself comfortable in the life that Vanessa and I had built together. I asked Derek if he recognized the guy from anywhere. Maybe someone from our office building or a mutual acquaintance. But no, Derek had never seen him before. He was just some random dude that Vanessa had brought into our lives and our home without my knowledge. The rest of that lunch felt like an out-of-body experience. I kept nodding and saying, "Yeah," while Derek continued talking. But my brain was completely fried and unable to focus on anything he was saying. All I could think about was Saturday afternoon and trying to remember exactly what Vanessa had told me she was doing that day. She'd said she was spending the entire day with her sister Jessica, addressing wedding invitations and doing other wedding preparation tasks. She'd made it sound like they were going to make a whole girly day of it, complete with music and snacks and quality sister bonding time. Every single word of it had been complete bullshit. When I finally made it back to work, I couldn't focus on anything for the rest of the day. Every time I tried to look at spreadsheets and analyze numbers, my brain kept circling back to what Derek had told me. The image of Vanessa making out with some random guy, bringing him to our apartment, and lying directly to my face about where she was and who she was with. It was playing on repeat in my mind like a horrible movie I couldn't turn off. The drive home that evening felt like it took forever, even though it's normally only a 20-minute commute. I kept thinking that maybe there was some reasonable explanation for what Derek had witnessed. Maybe he was wrong about what he saw, or maybe it wasn't what it looked like from his vantage point. Maybe I was overthinking everything and letting my imagination run wild with worst-case scenarios. But deep down in my gut, I knew the truth. You know that terrible feeling when something's fundamentally off in your relationship, even when you can't quite put your finger on what it is? As I reflected on the past few weeks, I realized I'd actually been ignoring little warning signs without even consciously recognizing them at the time. Vanessa had been extra secretive with her phone lately, always keeping it face down and taking calls in the other room where I couldn't hear the conversations. She'd also become surprisingly interested in my work schedule all of a sudden, asking detailed questions about when I'd be leaving the office and whether I had any meetings that might run late. These were small things that didn't seem particularly significant by themselves, but now they were starting to make perfect sense as part of a larger pattern of deception. When I finally got home that evening, Vanessa was in full bride mode, completely immersed in wedding planning. She had wedding-related paperwork and materials spread all over our dining room table like some kind of command center. She was humming some cheerful song under her breath and practically glowing with excitement about our upcoming big day. "Hey babe, how was work today?" she asked brightly when she saw me walk in. "I had such a productive day with Jessica. We got so much accomplished for Saturday. I'm so excited I can barely contain myself." I stood there watching her talk with such animated enthusiasm and genuine happiness, and the whole scene felt completely surreal. It was like I was looking at someone I didn't even know anymore. Every single word coming out of her mouth felt fake and rehearsed. She was either the world's most talented actress, or she genuinely didn't give a damn that she'd been cheating on me just hours earlier while I was at work thinking about how lucky I was to have such an amazing fiancé. "That's great," I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. "What kind of stuff did you and Jessica work on today?" "Oh, typical wedding prep stuff," Vanessa replied enthusiastically. "We addressed the last batch of invitations that needed to go out, finalized the seating arrangement for the reception, and went over the timeline one more time to make sure everything flows perfectly. Just girl stuff, really. Jessica even brought a bottle of wine, so we made a whole fun afternoon of it. She's so excited to be my maid of honor. Every single word was a complete lie. She hadn't been with Jessica at all. She'd been with some guy named whatever his name was, doing God knows what in our apartment while I was at work thinking about our future together. The ease with which she could fabricate such detailed, convincing stories was honestly terrifying. That night, I barely got any sleep at all. Vanessa was passed out cold next to me, completely relaxed and peaceful, probably dreaming about our perfect wedding and how wonderful everything was going to be. Meanwhile, I just stared at the ceiling for hours, my mind racing as I thought about how my entire relationship was apparently built on lies and deception. The worst part wasn't even the cheating itself, as devastating as that was. It was discovering how incredibly easy lying came to Vanessa. She could look me directly in the eye and make up elaborate, detailed stories about spending the day with her sister, complete with specific activities and conversations, when she'd actually been screwing around with some random guy in our own apartment. The level of manipulation and deceit was staggering. I made a decision right then and there that I wasn't going to confront her about this immediately. I needed to gather more information first. How long had this affair been going on? Who exactly was this guy she was seeing? Was this a one-time mistake, or had she been systematically playing me for months? But most importantly, I wanted to see if she would confess on her own without any pressure from me. I wanted to give her every possible opportunity to come clean and maybe, just maybe, show some genuine remorse for what she'd done to our relationship. I spent the entire next day at work completely distracted and unable to focus on anything productive. I kept checking the clock every 5 minutes, watching the hours crawl by painfully slowly. My plan was relatively simple: get home at my usual time, wait for the right moment when we were both relaxed, then just ask her directly about Saturday. I would give her every opportunity to tell me the truth about what really happened and see how she responded. Part of me was still desperately hoping that Derek had somehow been wrong about what he witnessed, or that there was some reasonable explanation that would make sense of everything. Unfortunately, that hope died pretty quickly once I actually talked to Vanessa. I got home around 6:45 p.m., and Vanessa was in the kitchen preparing dinner, still riding high on that ridiculously good mood she'd been in since the day before. When she saw me walk through the door, she gave me this big, enthusiastic kiss and immediately started going on and on about how excited she was for our wedding. "Only 4 more days, babe. Can you believe it?" she said, practically bouncing with excitement. "I was looking at my dress again today, and I literally got emotional just thinking about walking down the aisle to you. This is going to be the best day of our lives." The best day of our lives. She was talking about the best day of our lives while actively cheating on me behind my back. The sheer audacity of it was absolutely unreal. After dinner, we settled on the couch to watch some show that Vanessa liked. She was curled up next to me, acting all lovey-dovey and affectionate, playing with my hair and talking excitedly about our honeymoon plans. The whole scene felt like some kind of twisted, cruel joke that the universe was playing on me. I decided it was time to get some answers. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but I had to know the truth about what really happened on Saturday. I couldn't go into our wedding with these doubts and suspicions eating me alive. "Hey, how was Saturday with Jessica again?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual and conversational. "You guys seem to get a lot accomplished." Vanessa didn't even bother looking away from the television screen when she answered. "Oh, it was great. So productive and fun. We basically finalized everything for Saturday's big day. Jessica's such a good sister for helping me with all these last-minute details. She was still lying, even when I was giving her a perfect opportunity to come clean about what really happened. Instead of showing any signs of guilt or remorse, she doubled down on the complete bullshit story about spending the day with her sister." "That's really cool," I said, watching her face carefully for any reaction. "Derek mentioned that he saw you around the apartment complex on Saturday afternoon. He said you were with someone he didn't recognize." That definitely got her attention. She turned to look at me with this confused expression that seemed genuine at first, like she was genuinely puzzled about what Derek could have possibly seen. "Derek? When did you talk to Derek?" she asked, her voice taking on a slightly defensive tone. "And what do you mean he saw me? I don't understand what he could have seen." "We had lunch yesterday," I explained, studying her facial expressions and body language for any tells. "He lives in the building right next to ours, you know. He said he saw you in our parking lot with some guy around 2:30 p.m. that he'd never seen before." I watched her face very carefully during this exchange. For about 2 seconds, she looked genuinely confused, like she was trying to figure out what Derek could have possibly witnessed. Then something shifted dramatically in her expression. I could literally see her brain working overtime, trying to calculate exactly how much Derek had actually seen and what the potential damage might be. She claimed it was just someone asking for directions to another building in the complex, but everything about her delivery screamed deception. Her voice became noticeably nervous. She avoided making eye contact with me, and her tone became defensive rather than explanatory. When I pressed her for more details about this supposed stranger who needed directions, she snapped back at me, accusing me of being paranoid and suspicious just days before our wedding was supposed to happen. She tried to make it seem like I was the one ruining things and creating problems where none existed. It was classic deflection and manipulation. But I wasn't going to let her turn this around on me. I kept pressing for more details and specifics about her story, and eventually her whole carefully constructed act completely fell apart. She went from defensive to cold and blunt in a matter of seconds. "Fine, you want the whole truth?" she said, her voice taking on this matter-of-fact tone that was completely devoid of emotion. "I've been seeing someone named Brandon for a few weeks. We met at a work happy hour, and we hit it off really well. And yes, I slept with him multiple times, actually. I just wanted to experience one last man before being settled into married life forever." Then came the part that truly blew my mind and showed me exactly who I was dealing with. Instead of showing any remorse or taking responsibility for her actions, Vanessa looked me straight in the eye and said, "Well, it's your fault I cheated anyway." I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. My fault? How could her decision to betray our relationship and lie to me for weeks possibly be my fault? "You've been so boring lately," she continued, her voice taking on this accusatory tone, like I was the one who had done something wrong. always talking about the wedding and being responsible and planning for the future. Brandon makes me feel alive again. He's exciting and spontaneous and fun. Maybe if you were more like that, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere for excitement. My fault. I was apparently so boring that she had no choice but to cheat on me. The twisted logic was so completely insane that I didn't even know how to respond to it. I sat there staring at this woman I thought I knew and loved, and I realized that I had absolutely no idea who she actually was underneath the facade she'd been maintaining. The Vanessa I thought I was in love with and planning to marry simply didn't exist. This person sitting next to me on our couch was someone who could cheat on her fiancé for weeks, lie about it without hesitation, blame him for her own betrayal, and then act like he should be grateful that she hadn't just left him outright. It was like discovering that someone you'd been living with was actually a complete stranger wearing a mask. The entire conversation felt completely surreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart instead of experiencing my own personal nightmare. I realized right then and there that our entire 4-year relationship had probably been built on lies and manipulation. How many other times had she cheated on me that I just never found out about? How many other stories and explanations had been complete fabrications designed to keep me in the dark? The worst part was that she genuinely seemed to think she was being completely reasonable and rational. Like I was the crazy, unreasonable one for being upset about discovering that my fiancé had been systematically betraying me for weeks while planning our wedding. "So what happens now?" I asked, genuinely curious about how she thought this was all going to play out. "Now we get married on Saturday," she replied, without missing a beat, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "And we forget this conversation ever happened. What's done is done, Tyler. We can't change the past, so we can only move forward from here." Move forward like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just completely destroyed our entire relationship with a few casual sentences. That's when I realized exactly what I had to do. Vanessa had made her choice when she decided to cheat on me and lie about it for weeks. Now I was going to make mine. But first, I was going to make absolutely sure that everyone who was planning to celebrate our perfect love story on Saturday knew exactly who they were really celebrating. So I had 2 basic options in front of me. Option 1 was to cancel everything like a normal, rational person would do. Call off the wedding, tell people we had irreconcilable differences, and move on with my life quietly and with dignity. Option 2 was way more interesting and appealing to me. Here's the thing about Vanessa that I was just now beginning to understand. This girl lives for attention and validation from others. Her entire identity and self-worth is built around being perceived as the perfect girlfriend, the perfect bride, the perfect everything. If I just canceled the wedding quietly like a normal person, Vanessa would inevitably spin the entire situation to make herself look like the innocent victim. She'd tell everyone that I got cold feet at the last minute, or that I was controlling and couldn't handle her being independent, or that I had commitment issues. She'd probably manage to get sympathy and support from our friends and family while making me look like the asshole who abandoned his bride just days before the wedding. No way in hell was I going to let that happen. I wanted everyone to see exactly who Vanessa really was behind that carefully crafted facade. Not the fake, perfect version she shows the world, but the real person who could cheat on her fiancé for weeks and then blame him for it. The person who thinks cheating is just practice before marriage, and that I should be grateful she chose me in the end. Wednesday morning, I called in sick to work and told my boss I had food poisoning and needed to recover before the wedding. Vanessa left for work around 8:15 a.m. in this absolutely amazing mood, still humming cheerfully and talking about how she couldn't wait for Friday's rehearsal dinner. She kept going on about how she was going to wear this stunning purple dress that made her eyes pop, and how everyone was going to absolutely love the venue we'd picked for the rehearsal dinner. "I'm so excited, babe," she said as she was getting ready to leave. "Tomorrow night is going to be absolutely perfect. All our favorite people in one room celebrating us together. I can't wait to see everyone's faces when we walk in as the happy couple." Oh, people were definitely going to have some interesting facial expressions, all right, just not the kind she was expecting or hoping for. After Vanessa left for work, I got down to business. The first thing I did was go through her phone much more thoroughly than I had before. Vanessa is one of those people who never deletes anything from their devices, so there were literally weeks worth of text message conversations between her and this Brandon guy just sitting there waiting to be discovered. The stuff I found was so much worse than what she'd actually admitted to me the night before. They had been hooking up regularly since about 3 weeks after that work happy hour where they first met, which meant she'd been systematically cheating on me for approximately 2 months. And it wasn't just physical encounters. They had these long, detailed conversations about their emotional connection and how trapped and unfulfilled she felt in our relationship. One particular message from about 2 weeks ago really hit me like a punch to the gut. "I wish I could just run away with you and start over somewhere new," she had written to Brandon. "But I've invested too much time and energy in this wedding to back out now. After Saturday, I'll figure out how to handle Tyler in this whole situation. Handle me. Like I was some kind of problem or obstacle that she needed to solve, instead of the man she was supposedly in love with and planning to spend her life with." Another message from the previous week was equally devastating. "Tyler's being so sweet about all the wedding planning," she had texted Brandon. "He has no idea that I'm only going through with this because it's easier than explaining to everyone why I'm calling it off. Poor guy actually thinks I want to marry him. Poor guy." She was talking about me like I was some pathetic, clueless loser who didn't deserve basic honesty or respect from his own fiancé. But the absolute worst message was one from Monday morning, sent right after Derek had witnessed her with Brandon in our parking lot. "Had to do some damage control with Tyler last night," she had written to Brandon with obvious amusement. "Told him we were just giving directions, lol. He's so gullible he believed every word. This is going to be easier than I thought." Reading that particular message made my blood absolutely boil. Not just because she was literally laughing about lying directly to my face, but because she thought I was stupid and gullible enough to believe her obviously fabricated story. What she didn't know was that I'd actually recorded our entire Tuesday night conversation on my phone, so I had concrete evidence of everything she'd admitted to me. I spent the rest of Wednesday methodically screenshotting everything I could find on her phone. All the conversations with Brandon, all the lies about where she was going and who she was with, all her complaints about our relationship and how bored and trapped she felt. I even found messages to her female friends about how she was only marrying me because it was convenient and socially expected, while Brandon was just for fun and excitement. Thursday, I started building what would become my masterpiece, a slideshow presentation that would expose everything. This was going to be my opportunity to show everyone exactly who Vanessa really was behind the perfect bride facade. Vanessa came home Thursday evening in an even better mood than usual, if that was even possible. She'd gotten her nails done for the rehearsal dinner and kept showing them to me, talking about how perfectly they coordinated with her dress and how amazing everything was going to look in photos. She was practically glowing with excitement and anticipation. We spent Thursday night going over all the final details for the rehearsal dinner. She had this incredibly detailed timeline printed out that specified exactly what time everyone was supposed to arrive, when dinner would be served, when the speeches would happen, and when my surprise slide show would be presented. She had planned every single minute of the evening down to the second with military precision. "How many people confirmed for tomorrow again?" I asked, already knowing the answer but wanting to hear her say it. 47, she replied enthusiastically. "My parents, your parents, both sets of grandparents, my college friends, your college friends, some people from work. Everyone who matters to us will be there to celebrate our love story. Everyone who matters. Including all the people who thought Vanessa was this sweet, innocent, trustworthy girl who would never hurt anyone. They were about to find out exactly who she really was underneath that carefully maintained image." Friday morning, Vanessa was like a kid on Christmas morning. She kept obsessively checking her phone, making tiny adjustments to the timeline, and ensuring that every detail was absolutely perfect for the evening's celebration. She had taken the entire day off work to get ready and handle any last-minute coordination that needed to be done. I went to work as usual, but I couldn't concentrate on anything productive. My mind kept racing, thinking about the slideshow and trying to imagine what people's reactions were going to be when they saw Vanessa's true nature exposed. Part of me was genuinely nervous about what I was planning to do. This was going to be absolutely brutal for everyone involved, and there would be no taking it back once it happened. But then I'd remember Vanessa laughing about how gullible I was, or her telling Brandon that she was only marrying me because it was convenient, and all the nerves would disappear completely. She had made her choices, and now everyone was going to see exactly what kind of person makes choices like that. I left work early that Friday afternoon to get ready and make absolutely sure that the slideshow was loaded properly on my laptop and ready to go. Everything was set up perfectly. All I had to do was connect to the projector at the venue and let Vanessa's own words and actions completely destroy her carefully crafted reputation. On the drive to the event hall, Vanessa was practically bouncing with excitement in the passenger seat. She kept talking enthusiastically about who was going to be there, what she wanted to say in her speech to thank everyone for coming, and how romantic and touching my surprise slides Ho was going to be for everyone to see. When we pulled into the event hall parking lot, I could already see people starting to arrive for the evening. Vanessa squeezed my hand tightly as we walked toward the entrance together. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, with this huge, genuine smile on her face. I squeezed her hand back and smiled right back at her. "More ready than you know," I replied, and I meant every word of it. At the rehearsal dinner, Vanessa was absolutely in her element. She was all smiles and warmth, enthusiastically hugging guests as they arrived, efficiently handing out name tags, and playing the role of the perfect bride-to-be to absolute perfection. Her parents were there looking incredibly excited and proud, completely in the dark about who their daughter really was underneath the surface. About halfway through dinner, Vanessa stood up to make her own heartfelt speech to the room. She talked about how incredibly lucky we were to have found each other, how I was truly her best friend and soulmate, and how absolutely perfect everything felt as we prepared to start our lives together as husband and wife. All of this while knowing full well that she'd been systematically cheating on me with Brandon for months and had no intention of being faithful after our wedding. Tyler surprised me by putting together a slideshow presentation of our relationship, she announced to the room with genuine excitement. And I honestly can't wait for everyone to see how we got to this amazing point in our lives together. It's going to be so romantic and meaningful. That was my cue to spring into action. I stood up from my chair and grabbed my laptop from the side table where I'd strategically placed it earlier. "Thanks, Vanessa," I said to the room with a smile. "I did put together a little presentation for everyone tonight. I thought it would be really nice to take a trip down memory lane and show everyone the real story of our relationship and how we got here." I connected my laptop to the projector system, and the large screen at the front of the room lit up brightly. Everyone in the room turned their chairs to face the screen and got quiet with anticipation for what they thought would be a sweet, romantic journey through our relationship. "So here we go," I announced to the room, the real story of Vanessa and Tyler. The slideshow started exactly like I had planned it. The first slide was a beautiful photo of us from our very first date at that Mexican restaurant downtown 4 years ago. Everyone in the room made those collective awe sounds that people make when they see cute couple photos. For the first 3 minutes or so, everything was proceeding exactly like the romantic slideshow that Vanessa had been expecting and anticipating. People were making happy comments about how young and in love we looked, and Vanessa was squeezing my hand proudly while beaming with joy and pride. Then slide 15 came up on the screen, and everything changed in an instant. It was a crystal clear screenshot of text messages with Vanessa's name clearly visible at the top. The messages were to someone named Brandon, and they were dated from just yesterday. The content was devastating. "Can't wait for tonight," followed by, "Tyler thinks I'm getting my nails done." Then, "After tomorrow, I won't have to pretend anymore." And finally, "One more day of acting like the perfect bride." The room got quiet extremely fast. I could see people squinting at the screen, trying to read the messages and process what they were seeing. Vanessa's grip on my hand went from gentle and loving to painful and desperate in a matter of seconds. "Tyler, what is this?" she whispered urgently, but I just kept clicking to the next slide without acknowledging her question. The next slide showed more damaging messages from earlier in the week. "Had to do some damage control with Tyler," followed by, "Told him we were just giving directions LOL. And he's so gullible, he believed every word." Now people were starting to look genuinely confused and concerned. Vanessa's mom was trying to read the messages from her seat across the room, squinting and leaning forward. Her dad had this bewildered expression on his face as he tried to understand what he was looking at. The following slides presented a comprehensive timeline of Vanessa's lies and deception. I showed screenshots of her telling me she was with her sister Jessica when she was actually with Brandon. I included social media posts that directly contradicted her stories about where she'd been and what she'd been doing. I displayed photos that Brandon had posted to his own social media accounts, showing Vanessa in places she had specifically told me she wasn't. Vanessa tried desperately to grab my laptop to stop the presentation, but I smoothly moved it away from her reach. "Tyler, stop this right now!" she hissed at me. "Everyone, this is all taken completely out of context." But there was absolutely no context that could possibly explain away what everyone in the room was seeing with their own eyes. These were her own words, her own messages, providing undeniable proof that she'd been systematically lying to me for months while planning our wedding. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The final slide was simply text that said in large letters, And here's what Vanessa really thinks about our relationship. This was followed immediately by the audio recording from our Tuesday night conversation. Vanessa's voice came through the event hall speakers with perfect clarity. Fine, you want the whole truth? I've been seeing Brandon for a few weeks. We met at that work happy hour and we hit it off really well. And yes, I slept with him multiple times, actually. I just wanted to experience one last man before being settled into married life forever. The silence in the room was absolutely deafening. You could have heard a pin drop. Then my voice came through the speakers. You've been cheating on me for weeks? Vanessa's recorded voice responded with shocking casualness. Oh, please don't be so dramatic about it. It's not cheating. It's just having fun before I get tied down permanently. It doesn't mean anything serious. The audio recording continued playing, capturing Vanessa blaming me for her cheating, calling me boring, and telling me that I should be grateful she had chosen me in the end instead of leaving me for Brandon. When the recording finally finished, the silence in the room was absolutely deafening. 47 people were staring directly at Vanessa while she sat there with her face bright red, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Her dad was the first person to break the terrible silence. "Vanessa, what the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice filled with shock and disappointment. That's when Vanessa completely and utterly lost it. She stood up abruptly and slapped me across the face as hard as she possibly could. The sound of the slap echoed through the entire event hall like a gunshot, and everyone gasped in shock at the sudden violence. "You psycho!" she screamed at the top of her lungs. "You ruined everything! This was supposed to be perfect!" Everyone in the room gasped collectively and started talking at once, their voices creating a chaotic buzz of confusion and disbelief. Vanessa's mom immediately started crying, covering her face with her hands. Her college friends were frantically pulling out their phones to record what was happening, realizing they were witnessing an epic meltdown in real time. But Vanessa wasn't finished with her public breakdown. She started screaming hysterically about how I had destroyed her entire life, and how could I possibly do something this cruel to her in front of everyone she cared about most. "If you leave me, I'll kill myself. Do you hear me, Tyler?" She shrieked loud enough for the entire event hall to hear. "I'll kill myself, and it'll be your fault." She was making suicide threats in front of 47 people, including both sets of grandparents. It was a truly classy move that really showed everyone exactly what kind of person they were dealing with. Her sister Jessica tried desperately to calm her down and get her to lower her voice, but Vanessa was having a complete psychological breakdown and was beyond reasoning with. She kept screaming about how this was supposed to be her perfect night and how I had maliciously ruined everything for her. The event hall manager came over asking politely if everything was okay and if there was anything he could do to help, but Vanessa started yelling at him too, screaming that this was her rehearsal dinner and nobody could tell her what to do. That's when the security guards showed up. They asked Vanessa to lower her voice and calm down, or they would have to ask her to leave the premises. "This is my rehearsal dinner!" she screamed back at them. "You can't kick me out of my own dinner!" But her meltdown was getting progressively worse instead of better, and she was disturbing other events happening in the building. She was still shrieking about how everyone was against her and how this was all my fault when security made the decision for her. They physically escorted Vanessa out of the event hall while she was still screaming at the top of her lungs about how everyone was conspiring against her and how none of this was fair to her. The remaining 46 people just sat there in complete stunned silence, trying to process everything they had just witnessed. I calmly closed my laptop, grabbed my coat from the back of my chair, and walked out of the event hall without saying another word to anyone. I got back to my hotel room around 10:30 p.m. and just sat there for a long while, trying to process everything that had happened and what it all meant. My phone was already blowing up with text messages and missed calls from people who had been at the dinner, but I wasn't emotionally ready to deal with any of that yet. I just wanted to take a hot shower and try to get some sleep. Around 11:30 p.m., I finally started going through all the messages that had been pouring in. Most of them were surprisingly supportive. People were saying they couldn't believe that Vanessa had been lying to everyone for so long, that they were genuinely sorry I had to go through such a terrible experience, and that I had done the right thing by exposing her true nature before the wedding actually happened. Vanessa's mom sent me a long, heartfelt text message apologizing profusely for her daughter's behavior and saying that she and Vanessa's father were absolutely mortified by what had happened at the dinner. Her dad actually called me around midnight to tell me that he was proud of me for having the courage to show everyone who Vanessa really was instead of just quietly canceling the wedding and letting her spin whatever story she wanted. But the most interesting and revealing messages came from Vanessa's college friends. It turns out that she had actually been bragging to them about Brandon for weeks, acting like having a secret affair while planning her wedding was totally normal and acceptable behavior. One of them, a girl named Kelsey, sent me screenshots of their group chat messages where Vanessa had been laughing about how easy it was to deceive me. "Tyler is so clueless he believes everything I tell him," one message read. "I could probably say I was volunteering at an orphanage and he'd buy it LOL." These girls had known for weeks that Vanessa was actively cheating on me, and not a single one of them had thought to warn me about what was happening. They all apparently assumed it was just typical pre-wedding jitters, and that she would get it out of her system before our actual wedding day. The most infuriating part was reading Vanessa's response when one of her friends asked if she felt bad about lying to me so extensively. "Why should I feel bad?" she had written. "He's getting a wife who knows what she wants. If anything, I'm doing him a favor by making sure I don't have any regrets later." A favor. She genuinely thought that cheating on me for months was somehow doing me a favor. About 2 hours later, I decided to check Vanessa's social media accounts to see if she had posted anything about what had happened at the rehearsal dinner. That's when I discovered that the real show was just getting started. Vanessa had posted what could only be described as a novel on Facebook at 12:03 a.m. I'm talking about 17 paragraphs of pure victim mentality bullshit that would have been impressive if it weren't so completely delusional. The post started with, "I never thought the person I loved most would try to destroy my life, and just got progressively worse from there." She painted herself as this innocent victim who had made one tiny mistake that I had blown completely out of proportion for my own twisted reasons. According to her version of events, I was a controlling psychopath who had violated her privacy and deliberately humiliated her in front of everyone she cared about. The most ridiculous part was how she described the months of systematic cheating. She called it a brief moment of weakness where I sought comfort from a friend during a stressful time in my life. According to her post, instead of communicating with me like a mature adult, Tyler chose to publicly humiliate me and destroy our relationship. A brief moment of weakness. 2 months of deliberate cheating and lying was apparently just a brief moment of weakness in her mind. But she wasn't done rewriting history. The post went on to accuse me of being emotionally abusive, of isolating her from her friends, and of controlling every aspect of her life. None of this was remotely true, but she was clearly trying to rewrite our entire relationship history to make herself look sympathetic and gain public support. The comment section on her post was absolutely brutal, though. Person after person who had been at the rehearsal dinner was calling her out for lying and trying to manipulate the narrative. Someone had already posted a video of her complete meltdown that was getting shared around social media, and people were commenting with laugh emojis and asking if she seriously expected anyone to believe her victim story after what they had all witnessed firsthand. Around 2:30 a.m., she posted again, this time on Instagram. It was a photo of her in her wedding dress with a caption about how some people will do anything to hurt you when they can't control you. She was still desperately trying to play the victim role even after everything that had happened and all the evidence that had been presented. I finally went to bed around 3 a.m., thinking that surely the worst of this nightmare was over and that things would start to calm down. I was completely wrong about that assumption. Saturday morning, I woke up to 19 missed calls and dozens of text messages waiting for me. Vanessa had apparently spent the entire night on an absolute rampage that made her social media posts look tame and reasonable by comparison. The first thing I saw was a text message from my boss that had been sent at 4:12 a.m. "Tyler, I got a very concerning call about you tonight. We should talk first thing Monday morning." My stomach immediately dropped to the floor. What the hell had Vanessa done now? I called my boss immediately, even though it was only 8:15 a.m. on a Saturday morning. He picked up on the second ring, which told me he had been expecting my call. "Tyler, what's going on?" he asked, clearly concerned. "I got a call at 3:30 a.m. from someone claiming to be your fiancé, saying you're mentally unstable and dangerous. She said you'd threatened her, and that I needed to fire you immediately for the safety of other employees." Vanessa had actually called my boss at 3:30 in the morning on a Saturday to try to get me fired from my job. 3 hours after her public meltdown at the event hall, she was making phone calls trying to destroy my career. I explained the entire situation to my boss, including the fact that Vanessa and I weren't even together anymore after I had caught her cheating. He was completely understanding about it and said he had figured it was probably relationship drama. But he had to ask about it since someone had made specific accusations about workplace safety. After I hung up with my boss, I started going through the rest of my messages. Vanessa had apparently spent the night systematically calling and texting anyone whose phone number she could find in my contacts. She had called my parents at various hours, crying hysterically about how I had destroyed her life and begging them to talk some sense into me. She told my mom that I was having a complete mental breakdown and needed professional psychiatric help. She had called my brother with the exact same story, trying to get my own family to turn against me. Around noon, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, it was Brandon, the guy she had been cheating with. "Dude, is Vanessa your ex-fiancé?" he asked, sounding genuinely confused and concerned. "Because this chick has been blowing up my phone all night, and she's acting completely psychotic." Apparently, Vanessa had spent part of her post-meltdown evening calling Brandon repeatedly, alternating between begging him to run away with her and start a new life together, and screaming at him for ruining her life and abandoning her when she needed him most. She had sent him dozens of text messages that started out romantic and desperate, then got progressively more unhinged and threatening. First, she was like, "We can finally be together now that Tyler's out of the picture," Brandon explained. And then when I didn't respond the way she wanted, she started calling me every name in the book. She sent me like 52 text messages, calling me a coward and saying I had used her. Brandon told me that he had only hooked up with Vanessa a few times and had absolutely no interest in anything serious or long-term with her. When he saw all the social media drama unfolding and realized that she had actually been engaged the entire time they were seeing each other, he immediately blocked her on everything. "I thought she was completely single, man," he said, sounding genuinely apologetic. "She never once mentioned having a fiancé or being in a serious relationship. This whole situation is way too crazy and dramatic for me to deal with." So not only had Vanessa destroyed our 4-year relationship and humiliated herself in front of everyone we knew, she had also gotten completely rejected by the guy she had thrown everything away for. Brandon wanted absolutely nothing to do with her once he realized the full extent of her deception and instability. By Sunday afternoon, the fallout from Friday night was getting progressively worse rather than better. More and more people from the rehearsal dinner were posting about what they had witnessed, sharing videos and photos of Vanessa's complete breakdown. Meanwhile, Vanessa kept posting increasingly desperate content on social media, desperately trying to control the narrative and make herself look like the victim in all of this. But it was far too late for damage control. Everyone could see exactly who she was and what kind of person she really was underneath that carefully crafted facade. No amount of victim playing or sob stories was going to change what people had witnessed with their own eyes. The girl who had spent years meticulously building this image of being perfect, trustworthy, and innocent had completely destroyed her own reputation in a single night. And then she had made everything 10 times worse by refusing to accept any responsibility for her actions and doubling down on her victim narrative. What had started as simply exposing a cheater had turned into watching someone have a complete psychological breakdown in real time, broadcast across social media for everyone to see. Vanessa's situation continued to deteriorate throughout the following week. Her company had caught wind of the social media meltdown and called her in for a meeting about maintaining professional standards and representing the company appropriately. Apparently, posting dozens of unhinged rants while tagging people from work wasn't considered a good look for someone in marketing. One of her coworkers reached out to tell me that Vanessa had been put on administrative leave, while HR investigated whether her personal issues were affecting her ability to do her job effectively. Getting suspended from work for having a public breakdown over getting caught cheating has to be some kind of new low. But the real damage was happening to her social life and personal relationships. Vanessa's college friends, who had known about Brandon and enabled her cheating for weeks, started distancing themselves once they realized how unstable and manipulative she had become. Nobody wanted to be associated with someone who would make suicide threats at their own rehearsal dinner. By Wednesday, Vanessa had apparently realized that her victim strategy wasn't working and wasn't gaining her any sympathy or support. She switched tactics and started posting about how she was focusing on healing and learning from her mistakes. It was a classic damage control move that people use when playing the victim stops getting them the attention they want. Thursday, I got an unexpected call from Vanessa's dad. I almost didn't answer because I figured he was calling to defend his daughter or ask me to somehow make this situation go away. But I was curious about what he had to say, so I picked up. "Tyler, I owe you another apology," he said, his voice heavy with disappointment and shame. "We just found out that Vanessa's been lying to us for months about much more than just the cheating. She borrowed $6,000 from us last month, claiming it was for additional wedding expenses that had come up. He paused, and I could hear him taking a deep breath before continuing. But we found out she actually spent that money on a vacation with that Brandon guy. She told us the florist needed an extra deposit when she really needed cash to go to some resort with her affair partner the weekend before your rehearsal dinner. Apparently, Vanessa had been systematically using wedding money to fund her affair. She had lied to her own parents about needing money for wedding preparations when she was actually spending it on romantic getaways with the guy she was cheating with. "We're cutting her off financially until she gets serious professional help," her dad continued. "What she did to you was completely unforgivable, but lying to her own family about money just shows how far gone she really is." He also told me that they had been getting calls from Vanessa's landlord about late rent payments and from credit card companies about missed payments. It turns out that Vanessa's financial situation was much worse than anyone had known, and she had apparently been planning to use our joint accounts after the wedding to dig herself out of debt without telling me about any of it. Friday marked exactly 1 week since the rehearsal dinner disaster, and I decided it was time to treat myself. I used some of the money we had saved for our honeymoon to book a weekend trip to Vegas with my buddies. It felt like the perfect way to celebrate my newfound freedom and the fact that I had dodged a massive bullet by not actually marrying Vanessa. I posted a photo of us at the airport with the caption, "Sometimes the best revenge is living your best life," and it felt incredibly liberating to be able to share my happiness without worrying about Vanessa's reaction or having to manage her emotions. Apparently, Vanessa saw the post because she sent me a long text message Friday night. It was the first direct communication I had received from her since the complete disaster at the rehearsal dinner. "Tyler, I know you hate me right now," the message began, "but I need you to know that I'm getting help. I've started therapy, and I'm trying to understand why I made such horrible choices. I know I hurt you, and I know I destroyed everything good in my life. I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Too little. Too late." If she had come to that realization before she decided to cheat on me for months, or even before she decided to lie about it and blame me for her own betrayal, things might have been different. But you can't unring that bell once it's been rung. I read the message, took a screenshot of it for my records, and then blocked her number permanently. Some people have asked me if I feel bad about how public and humiliating the exposure was for Vanessa. Honestly, the answer is no. I don't feel bad about it at all. Vanessa made her choices when she decided to cheat on me and systematically lie about it for months. She made additional choices when she decided to blame me for her own betrayal and act like I should be grateful that she had chosen me over Brandon. I just made sure that everyone knew exactly who they were celebrating and supporting before they wasted their time and money on someone that fake and manipulative. The wedding would have been built on a foundation of complete lies, months of deception and manipulation. At least now everyone knows the truth about who Vanessa really is behind that perfect facade she had spent so much time and energy maintaining. She had spent years carefully crafting this image of being the ideal girlfriend and the sweet, innocent girl who would never hurt anyone. When in reality, she was someone who could look you directly in the eye and lie without any hesitation. Someone who could cheat on their partner for months and then blame them for it. Someone who could steal money from their own parents to fund an affair. The scariest part of this whole experience is realizing how incredibly good she was at deception. If Derek hadn't happened to see her with Brandon that Saturday afternoon, I would have actually married her without ever knowing that our entire relationship was built on lies. I would have spent years thinking I had this amazing, faithful wife while she was probably continuing to cheat behind my back with various other guys. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags that I missed or ignored. The way she would get defensive when I asked simple, innocent questions about her day. How she always seemed to have perfectly reasonable explanations ready for everything, even things that seemed suspicious. The way she would turn situations around to make me feel guilty for being suspicious or asking for basic honesty. These are classic manipulation tactics that I was apparently too trusting and naive to recognize at the time. Everyone keeps asking me what the biggest lesson I learned from this experience was. Honestly, the most important thing I learned is to always trust your gut instincts. When something feels off in a relationship, it usually is off. People who truly love and respect you don't make you feel crazy or paranoid for asking basic questions about their behavior and whereabouts. Another important lesson I learned is that screenshots and documentation are absolutely your best friend in situations like this. If I hadn't taken the time to carefully document everything, her lies, her text messages, her contradictory stories, Vanessa would have been able to spin this entire situation to make me look like the bad guy. Having concrete proof of her lies and her actual words made it completely impossible for her to rewrite history or manipulate the narrative in her favor. The other major realization I had is that sometimes the nuclear option really is the right choice to make. I could have quietly broken up with her and walked away, letting her tell everyone whatever story she wanted about why our relationship ended. But exposing her publicly ensured that everyone knew the actual truth about what had happened, and it prevented her from successfully playing the victim to people who didn't know any better. It's been a full month now since everything happened, and my life is honestly better than it's been in years. It turns out that I had been walking on eggshells much more than I had realized, constantly worried about saying the wrong thing or asking the wrong question that might set Vanessa off. Now I can just be myself without constantly second-guessing every word that comes out of my mouth. Dating has been an interesting experience, though. Word has definitely gotten around about what happened at the rehearsal dinner, and women seem to have very strong reactions that fall into one of two categories. They either think I'm a hero for exposing a cheater and standing up for myself, or they think I'm a psychopath for choosing such a public and humiliating method of revenge. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground. But honestly, I'm in absolutely no rush to get serious with anyone new. This whole experience taught me how critically important it is to really know someone on a deep level before making any major commitments. I also learned to pay much closer attention to people's actions rather than just listening to their words and promises. Vanessa was incredibly talented at saying all the right things and making all the right promises. But her actual actions told a completely different story about who she really was and what she actually valued. Next time I'm in a serious relationship, I'll be watching much more carefully for those little inconsistencies and red flags that add up to much bigger problems over time. The funny thing is that Vanessa probably thought she was being so clever and strategic. She wanted to keep Brandon as her backup plan and source of excitement while securing me as her stable, reliable option for marriage and financial security. She thought she could have her cake and eat it too, getting the best of both worlds without any consequences. But she ended up losing absolutely everything because she got greedy and overconfident in her ability to manipulate the situation. If she had just been honest about not being ready for marriage or having doubts about our relationship, we could have postponed the wedding or worked through those issues together like mature adults. Instead, she chose deception, manipulation, and betrayal, which ultimately destroyed not just our relationship, but her reputation, and apparently her entire life. That's exactly what happens when you think you're smarter than everyone else and that you can manipulate people indefinitely without consequences. Eventually, the house of cards falls down, and everyone gets to see what was really holding it up the whole time. So yeah, that's my complete story. From finding out about the cheating through the nuclear revenge at the rehearsal dinner, to watching someone's life completely implode because they couldn't handle the consequences of their own choices and actions. Would I do it again if I found myself in the same situation? Absolutely, without any hesitation. Some people genuinely deserve to have their true nature exposed publicly, especially when they've spent so much time and energy convincing everyone around them that they're something they're completely not. Vanessa made her bed with months of deliberate choices. The cheating, the lying, the manipulation, the blame shifting. Now she gets to lie in that bed, completely alone, dealing with all the consequences of those choices. The wedding would have been nothing but a complete lie from start to finish, built on months of systematic deception and manipulation. At least now everyone knows the truth about who Vanessa really is behind that carefully maintained perfect facade that she worked so hard to present to the world. She spent years crafting this elaborate image of being the ideal girlfriend, the sweet, innocent girl who would never hurt anyone or do anything wrong. When in reality, she was someone who could look you in the eye and lie without any hesitation whatsoever. Someone who could cheat on their partner for months while planning their wedding, then blame them for the betrayal. Someone who could steal money from their own parents to fund an affair, then play the victim when caught. The most terrifying part of this entire experience is discovering how incredibly good she was at deception and manipulation. If Derek hadn't happened to see her that Saturday afternoon, I would have married her completely unaware that our entire relationship was built on lies. I would have spent years thinking I had this amazing, faithful wife while she was probably still cheating behind my back with God knows how many other guys. Looking back now, I can clearly see all the red flags I missed or chose to ignore. The way she'd get defensive when I asked simple questions about her day. how she always had explanations ready for everything, even things that seemed suspicious. The way she'd turn things around to make me feel guilty for being suspicious or asking for basic honesty. Classic manipulation tactics that I was too trusting to recognize. Everyone keeps asking what I learned from this experience. Honestly, the biggest lesson is to trust your gut instincts. When something feels off, it usually is. People who truly love you don't make you feel crazy for asking basic questions about their behavior. Also, screenshots are your friend. If I hadn't documented everything, Vanessa would have spun this to make me look like the bad guy. Having proof of her lies and actual words made it impossible for her to rewrite history. The other thing is that sometimes the nuclear option is the right choice. I could have quietly broken up with her and let her tell everyone whatever story she wanted. But exposing her publicly ensured everyone knew the truth and prevented her from playing victim to people who didn't know better. It's been a month now, and my life is honestly better than it's been in years. Turns out I was walking on eggshells more than I realized, always worried about saying the wrong thing or asking the wrong question. Now I can just be myself without constantly second-guessing everything. Dating is interesting though. Word has gotten around about what happened, and women either think I'm a hero for exposing a cheater or they think I'm psycho for the public humiliation. No middle ground, apparently. But honestly, I'm in no rush to get serious with anyone. This whole experience taught me how important it is to really know someone before committing, and to pay attention to actions instead of just words. Vanessa was great at saying all the right things, but her actions told a completely different story. Next time, I'll be watching a lot more carefully for the little inconsistencies that add up to big lies. The funny thing is, Vanessa probably thought she was so smart, keeping Brandon as her backup plan while securing me as her stable option. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too, but ended up losing everything because she got greedy. If she'd just been honest about not being ready for marriage, we could have postponed things or worked through it. Instead, she chose deception and manipulation and destroyed not just our relationship, but her reputation and apparently her entire life. That's what happens when you think you're smarter than everyone else. Eventually, the house of cards falls down, and everyone sees what was really holding it up. So yeah, that's my story. From finding out about the cheating to the nuclear revenge at the rehearsal dinner, to watching someone's life completely implode because they couldn't handle the consequences of their own choices. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Some people deserve to have their true nature exposed, especially when they've spent so much time and energy convincing everyone around them that they're something they're not. Vanessa made her bed. Now she gets to lie in it, alone.